Apple is about to release its most expensive, most polarizing mobile device ever created, the foldable iPhone Ultra. This chart tracks Apple's flagship pricing over the years. We started at $999 for the iPhone X, crept up to $1,199 for the 15 Pro Max, and now we are looking at a jump to over $2,000 for the Ultra. That is roughly a $1,000 gap between the standard upcoming flagships and this new foldable tier. When you pay double the price of a premium phone, the natural assumption is that you are getting double the utility, plus every high-end feature Apple has to offer. But to build a folding device, Apple actually had to strip away several of the features you probably use every day. To figure out if this device makes sense for you, we have to stop looking at it as a traditional iPhone upgrade. Instead, we need to look closely at how you actually work. Let's start with the hardware cuts. The Ultra drops 4 major Pro features: Face ID, MagSafe, the optical telephoto lens, and the action button. These changes aren't just simple oversights. They are strict engineering trade-offs required to make a phone that bends in half. Think about how seamless unlocking your phone is right now. Face ID has been the standard for years, yet it is entirely absent from this $2,000 flagship. Then there's the internal magnetic array. Without it, the entire MagSafe ecosystem of desktop chargers, wallets, and car mounts you've built up is useless here. And for photography, you lose the optical telephoto lens, a hardware staple for anyone taking pro-level photos. If you approach this as a standard smartphone upgrade, paying $2,000 to lose your best camera, your chargers, and Face ID feels like a massive downgrade, which forces the question, who is this device actually engineered for? The answer starts with how you unlock it. Apple swapped the True Depth camera system for a Touch ID sensor built directly into the power button. Face ID struggles on foldables. When the device is half open, propped on a desk, or held sideways, the camera angle makes facial recognition highly unreliable. Touch ID solves that physics problem. Your finger lands on the edge naturally, providing consistent biometric access no matter how the device is folded. But the daily trade-off is real. If your hands are wet, you are locked out. You also lose that seamless look-to-unlock muscle memory you've relied on for years. Then there's the most controversial ergonomic choice, moving the volume buttons to the top edge of the device to make room for the motherboard on the right side. This placement feels wrong for a phone, but it is highly optimized for when the device is open in landscape tablet mode. The downside hits the moment you close it. Adjusting the volume one-handed on a folded screen becomes an awkward reach that forces you to shift your entire grip. These input choices prove a clear design philosophy. Apple prioritizes the open tablet state, even if it compromises the closed smartphone state. That same philosophy applies to the screen. Apple engineered a 4.5mm, ultra-thin, nearly crease-free folding display. Looking at this cross-section diagram, you can see how they do it. Apple uses variable thickness, ultra-thin glass, which specifically thins out right at the bending axis, allowing it to flex while remaining rigid everywhere else. They pair that with a viscoelastic, optically clear adhesive. This layer stays soft to absorb stress during a slow, gradual fold, but it stiffens instantly to protect the screen against a sudden drop. Combined with a liquid metal hinge, these layers create a display where the center fold is nearly invisible. But achieving that 4.5mm thinness carries a steep physical cost. There is simply no internal physical space left to house a MagSafe magnetic array. That means losing magnetic desktop stands, snap-on battery packs, and magnetic car mounts. Getting a magical creaseless display requires giving up the reliable physical charging tools we rely on every single day. Space constraints also dictate the camera hardware. The rear array is limited to a dual 48-megapixel wide and ultra-wide setup. If Apple added a third lens, the camera bump would make the folded device excessively thick and frustratingly top-heavy in your pocket. The reality for photography enthusiasts is stark. Without the optical telephoto zoom, this device is objectively worse at portraits and distant shots than a cheaper iPhone Pro. So what justifies the hardware sacrifices? The answer is software. The A20 Pro chip drives a custom side-by-side multitasking environment in iOS 27. As this interface mockup shows, you get true dual-app productivity. You can run 2 apps side by side, mirroring a desktop workflow on a mobile device. But this forces you to adapt. If you are used to the simple full-screen navigation of a standard phone, managing a complex hybrid workflow presents a real learning curve. However, if you are someone who already carries a secondary tablet for work, jumping into this interface will feel incredibly familiar and natural. The Ultra actively leaves the mobile photographer behind in order to cater heavily to the on-the-go productivity optimizer. All of these trade-offs bring us to the scenario match. Who should actually buy this device? This workflow quadrant chart measures phone-first to tablet-first workflows on the horizontal axis and budget on the vertical. The Ultra sits firmly in the top right. In contrast, the top left quadrant holds the pro feature loyalist, who demands premium cameras and seamless one-handed phone use. If you fall into that camp, if you rely on MagSafe, Face ID unlocking, optical zoom, and quick one-handed ergonomics, do not spend $2,000 on the Ultra. Buy the standard Pro Max instead. But look at the top right quadrant. This is the optimizer. This user constantly juggles a phone and tablet, reading, editing, and multitasking while traveling. For the optimizer, the high price tag and the awkward closed phone ergonomics are entirely worth it to gain a single consolidated workstation that fits in your pocket. The entire design of the iPhone Ultra is built on one simple assumption. The inside screen is the main event, and the outside screen is just a convenient cover for when you are walking around. Every engineering priority here favors the open 7.5-inch workstation as your primary device. The folded mode is essentially a secondary state, a utilitarian way to keep a full tablet in your pocket. Before you spend the money, check your own habits against this scorecard. Are you a heavy multitasker? Do you mostly use your device seated with two hands? Do you use a secondary tablet daily? If the answer is no, save your money. Don't buy a foldable expecting a better traditional phone. Buy it because you desperately need a pocketable tablet.